Welcome to Not Starving Artists, the podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Benson, money coach and equity actor. I am your financial cheerleader, here to help you build your financial confidence and have power over your money. The best part, no budgeting or bi-weekly paychecks required. I went from being a broke BFA grad having weekly panic attacks about money to a financially confident, wealth-building actor and business owner. Money gets to feel fun, simple, and sexy, and I am going to show you how. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited to welcome one of my favorite people on this earth back to the podcast today, Harriet Hadfield. I'm going to let her introduce herself, but I am so excited for our conversation today. We are going to talk about her coming up on 365 days of not buying a single new piece of clothing for her closet. She did a no-buy challenge. She's got a new course out. We're going to talk about spending with constraints, and then we're going to move into redefining like the starving artist trope and what it means to be a creative. Both of us have been through seasons of having to come back to our creativity in a new way this past year and a half. So without further ado, Harriet, self-proclaimed writer, outfit repeater, and makeup artist. Tell the people about you if they don't know who you are already.
I'm so happy to be in a Zoom room with you again. It feels so nice. Thank you for having me, Brooke. So for anyone who doesn't know, I'm an online business owner. I worked for many, many years as a celebrity makeup artist. I moved from London to LA as part of doing that. And then now I'm kind of in this really interesting place where I'm like, ooh, I don't really know what's next. I'm just following what feels right and trying to make decisions based on curiosity, I think is like the best way I can describe it. And again, style had always been something I'd been drawn to. I think being a makeup artist, I was so adjacent to that world that I've just always loved personal style. And I think how much it involves identity as well. So I've ended up writing a lot about that and really enjoying it.
And I just want to plug this right at the top. If you are not subscribed to Harriet's Substack, go get on it right away. We'll put it in the show notes for you to subscribe. Also, can you tell people who don't know about Substack how they can find you and subscribe to you?
Yes. So Substack, again, even if you just look for me as under Harry Makes Up, which is the same across all my handles, you'll find me. But my newsletter is called Harry Styles by Harriet Hadfield. And again, there's lots of outfit talk, lots of kind of deep, intimate conversation there as well. I find it's a place on the internet where I'm really enjoying exploring my creativity.
So good. And it's also a good flex on our brains to
Yes.
practice longer attention spans, right? And not
Yes.
be in like the 5 second scroll cadence
I've
that we're
I've
usually
realized
in.
I'm a long form content girly. That's
Yep.
what something I've come to realize the past year. I'm really good at making all different types of content, but I've had to spend time being like, actually, it's the long form content that brings me joy.
Yeah, it's so good. So you've been doing a lot of content on your Substack
Yeah.
about style and about your no buy challenge.
Yeah.
So you said before we started recording that you are 15 days away from
Yeah.
having gone an entire year without buying anything for your closet.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk why we're here talking about this on the Not Starving Artist podcast is because I see a lot of spending challenges being talked about, especially at the beginning of the year, like a no buy January, right? Like a dry January, but for
Yes.
spending, and how many days can you go without buying something, or cutting out certain categories like New Year's resolutions. And a lot of these spending challenges are focused on cutting back spending in order to have less money going out and more money to be saved. And what I notice happens is that's not a long-term solution, right? Because it's focused on the cutting back. It's not focused on what you're bringing into your life. The roots of it are usually guilt and shame fueled, right? Of like, I should be spending less. So why I want to talk about your no buy challenge is because even though the entire core of the challenge is that you're not spending money on new clothes, it actually was not financially fueled when you started it. So can you talk about that? Like what sparked the no buy challenge for you? And what is the no buy challenge? Like tell the people what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I could talk about this all day. So get a cup of tea, sit down, get comfy. I think, like you just said, Brooke, when we think about not doing something, people instantly think of like restraint, they think of deprivation, they think of punishment, like those words are so heavily attached. And I think when I was getting to a place where for me, the relationship I have to my clothes and how I express myself, it's another art form for me. And that doesn't mean I have to try and look like Iris Apfel, RIP, God love her. Like you can do that too, but I think style is it's something that gets to be intrinsically for you and a way for you to explore your own identity. And for me, it has a lot of meaning and it's been very healing in many scenarios in my life and continues to be. So the no buy challenge really came out of curiosity. I found myself being, and I kind of feel like there's several bullet points within this. I think for one, I was at a time in my life where I was experiencing some mental health stuff and I found myself being like, I've got to a point where if I want something, I can buy it. And that sounds like a really great place to be. And that it is fun. But at the same time, I'd find myself using shopping, especially as a way to kind of numb out sometimes. It was a way of like, oh, I need a little treat. I'm sad. Oh, I need a little treat. I'm happy. Oh, I've done really well this month. I need a little, like the little treat was kind of not a little treat. It was like a consistent treat system. And while I don't shame myself for that, there was this kind of, I'd look at my closet and be like, I have such a good closet. I love everything in here. And I found myself, obviously, I had that awareness of things that were going on with my mental health and kind of like how I've used shopping in the past. But there was also a feeling of if I couldn't buy anything, how much more creative would I be with what I had? And that for me was what drove this not shopping anything for my wardrobe for 365 days. Genuinely, I think if it had just been about the needing the little treat and recognizing my relationship to shopping, I don't think that would have been enough to sustain me. I think that would have felt like, oh, I'm making up for something, I'm making up for past consumption. Whereas when I looked at my wardrobe, I just thought, and I use a digital app called Index for anyone who doesn't know. It's like a great kind of like you're either a tracker or you're not a tracker when it comes to like your wardrobe. And I get it. Calories, anything like that, I never want to track. That is not fun for me. But wardrobe, that's data I can get by.
It's like a scrapbook too. It's very
It's like,
aesthetically
yeah, it's
pleasing.
very like aesthetically pleasing. And I downloaded that app and I was like, okay, if in theory, let's say I'm wearing like 20% of my wardrobe, what would it look like to wear as close to 100% of my wardrobe as possible? And I think especially being in a world where I've worked a lot in the kind of the celebrity arena, I've worked a lot in the fashion arena, I know that newness is a marketing term, right? Like newness is a way for businesses to make money. They need you to want a new thing in order to keep selling. For the most part, there are some exceptions to this. But when you think about fast fashion, when you think about trends, it's all from a lens to make you buy something because as human beings, we used to be scared of getting eaten by a lion. Now we're scared of not being accepted by our peers or the internet. Like the internet, right, is where we like a lot of us kind of recognize our um how we feel in terms of like what people think of us. And so I think that was there was so many things where I just kind of sat back and I was motivated by curiosity and I genuinely had the thought, I think this would be really fun. Like I
Mm.
genuinely felt excited by it. Like I didn't see it as like I'm trying to make something better. I'm trying to make something that's bad good. Like there was no moral attachment to it. And I understand for some people, especially when anything concerns money, that's something that you need support of like a money coach with, right? To do the work with. So like you have someone help you recognize that. But it really was just like, okay, I don't need more stuff like just because I can buy it does. And I think there was also that thing of being someone who could afford to buy what I wanted after being the starving artist at a time in my life where I couldn't buy those things. I think a part of me was also making up for lost time. A little bit of me
Mhm.
was like, oh my God, I need all this because poor baby starving artist Harry couldn't have this. And like, this is for her versus, I've sold a lot of stuff this year. There's been a lot of things where I'm like, can kind of see different reasons why I brought that now. And again, there's what's so good, and I think it's because of my background in coaching. Like I don't shame myself for it. It's just given me so much interesting information. But it has been even more fun than I could have anticipated. And I think that's what's so interesting. I went into it being like, I wonder if I can do it. Not, oh my gosh, I have to do it. Like that was the biggest difference. It really genuinely was an experiment. And this is what kind of created the No Buy Styling course was okay, well, if I think what I realized is even if I was starting my closet from scratch, had I been doing some kind of no buy, you don't have to do a year. Like if I was doing some kind of no bite, it would have helped me see how to use what I had first off. And I think whether it's clothes, whether it's kitchen appliances, whether it's like stationery, books, whatever it is, we can all agree like we get so used to the newness that we forget how to be creative with what we have. And for me, there was so much magic in reconnecting with that.
Oh my God, there's so many things. I have a full page of notes of like coming back to that, coming back to that, coming back to that. We have so many things to talk about. Okay. So I want to talk about the thing that you were saying about it feeling fun, right? And that being the thing that drove you and the curiosity. And I think this is such an important thing that we talk about because I think there's a lot of narrative around like if you're gonna try and hit a goal or do something, it has to come from that grit and you have to have like the passion. And normally we try and mine for like the guilt or the shame or the reprimanding in order to fuel us to do that, right? Or like the just the fact that we want to like hit a goal, right? Like I'm gonna say I'm gonna do a no buy for 365 days. So I'm gonna do it, right?
Yeah.
With there not being anything fun, exciting, juicy that you actually are excited about. And that's exactly why so many goals don't get hit, things fall flat. It's not a sustainable thing because at the end of the day, our body runs from things that are uncomfortable. And like
Mm.
being uncomfortable, yes, is part of it, but over the long term, like you have to give your body something to
Mm.
feel good about.
Yeah.
Right. And so making sure that it's something fueled in fun, fueled in excitement and curiosity. I think that's such a huge thing that you're bringing up here and why you were able to do it for an entire year.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think understanding that it was being driven from a place of curiosity, it was like, let's try doing this for 365 days. And the reason I started my Substack was like, I'm generally going to document what comes up as I do it. How do I handle temptation? What does it feel like to be like, I could break my no buy, I could keep going. And I think I had that flexibility where I saw it as if I end my no buy early or if I quote unquote failed, it didn't mean anything bad about me. And I think that was really good to genuinely put something to the test where I think knowing that made it easier to keep going.
Yeah.
And, there were so many things you'll see in the No Buy styling course as well that I talk about where from shopping my husband's closet to going to clothing swaps, like there were so many things I did that I was like, why have I never thought to do this? And I was like, because you didn't have to. And again, I think it comes back to like my no buy the 365 part was, oh, that would make it fun for me. I felt like doing a month. I was like, pretty much easily do that. Like I felt pretty confident in what I could do. I wanted to do a length of time that felt like, at what point would I feel temptation? Would it be to do with something going on mentally versus something that's like, oh, I'm filling a gap because I don't have XYZ and I'm going camping or whatever. Like I think even when I think about you know, it's kind of trickled into every area of my life now, which is so fascinating. Like, I feel like I look at my fridge and I'm like, what needs using up? And this might sound so silly, but I feel like it's given me, it's no longer like, woe is me, I only have this, this, and this left. It's like, okay, what could I do that would make this the yummiest thing possible? Like
Mm.
it's sort of like it's flipping it from like, woe is me, I only have this to like, okay, what could I do with this that would be so exciting for me? And I've made
Yeah.
challenges within challenges. Like what I wanted to do with the No Buy Styling course was teach people how to reconnect to how they feel in their clothes versus feeling like styling is something you have to get wrong or right. And there's so many things I show you so you learn how to kind of style your clothes, but from a place of to help you find what feels like you versus trying to be a carbon copy of everyone else. Like you don't have to want to look like me. You don't have to look like what's fashion is saying is trending right now. And even that, I think I watch trends come and go over my no buy and watching myself being like, oh, that's so interesting. See, I probably would have like partaken in it before in some
Mm.
extent and actually being really comfortable being quote unquote out of style. Like as if that, again, that's never been important to me, but I could see how like I was suddenly wearing things that the magazines or people would say is it's out now it's this like this is out this is in and being like oh but I still feel like me in this I don't need to get rid of it just because someone says I should and I don't claim to be the most sustainable person in the world. I'm working on it. If you see my recycling bin you get it. Like I'm working on it. We're a work in progress. But I think again the most sustainable thing you can do is just to wear the hell out of your clothes.
Mm.
That's it. That's the secret. Like,
Right. And this is where creative constraint, and so we have so many artists and creatives who listen to this podcast, and this is where when we're creating something, right, in our like specific artistry,
yeah,
sometimes it can feel paralyzing when everything is available to you,
yeah.
right? When every single medium is available to you, when every single word is available to you,
Mm.
when you are, when you aren't in a no buy challenge, you could go
Mhm.
and buy anything you could ever want. And
Yeah.
that endless amount of choice is paralyzing. Like, as someone who struggles with decision paralysis herself,
Mhm.
I get stuck in that all the time. And so creative constraint is something that artists we know really well,
Mm.
where one of my favorite artists, Austin Kleon, he has a great book called Steal Like an Artist. He has multiple books after that. This is something he's talked about where it's like he'll take one medium and give himself like a thing that he has to make, and he just has to make the best version with like these two materials or this one magazine clipping, and you just have to like do a thing and make it in those constraints.
Mm.
And the creativity then that can come inside of constraints is so much better than when you have every single thing available to you. And
Mm.
so watching you and like hearing you go through this over this past year, right? Of like, why didn't I think of that before? It's because everything was available to you. You didn't have the constraint
100%.
to make you like zone in and see the
Yeah.
smaller stuff and the creative ideas that
Mm.
come from. This is also why I think indie low budget movies are some of the best pieces of film and
Mm.
art, because they have to do shit that like they are so constrained with what they're able to do. This is why these super high produced
Yeah.
budget Rings of Power shows are
Yeah.
so bad because
Yeah.
they're like, we could spend $1 million on every single piece of
Mm.
this film, and you feel that, right? There was no like real intention behind a lot of it.
100%. I mean, if I think about like favorite things that stick out to me, especially like you mentioning like film, mentioning like I always remember, I don't know if you remember this music video. I think they were called the OK Go, and they just did a dance on treadmills. It's
That's
like it was like
amazing.
four of them. They had like all these treadmills in a row, and they just did like this dance where they were kind of like moving between treadmills. And it must have, I remember thinking like, wow, that's genius, because it was so you couldn't not watch it. It was like really, what's the word? Like mesmerizing. And you were like, this is just genius. I'm just watching people move on a treadmill. But it was like a dance. There was a rhythm to it. And it made the song stick in your head. You could picture it. And again, I think sometimes the creative constraints, and I wrote an essay about this called Creative Constraints versus Hard Styling Rules, is
Mm.
how you get to explore your personality. It's how you get
Mm.
to experiment. And I think it's when you can find the most enjoyment because you'll surprise yourself. For me, what came out of the creative constraints of not being able to add something in new was like, okay, well, do I turn a cardigan back to front? Then it looks different. Like, how do I
Mm.
do more with what I have if I have to? And not the have to from a place of feeling heavy or punishing, but like, this is the creative constraint. Go make some art with it. And I agree. I
Mm.
think there's something so exciting. Like, growing up in England, we had a show called Ready Steady Cook, and I remember that each contestant would have like a professional chef to help them, and the it was like a member of the public would bring. I think they got £5 each, so like $5 to spend on food, and they could like be as random as they wanted. Like someone could just buy like one piece of fish. They wanted to use like the whole £5 budget on like the one thing. Like some people would just like buy loads and loads of chocolate and be like, okay, you have to make a three-course meal with it. And I always loved what they came out with. I always thought like you said, would you have made that if you had a whole pantry full of ingredients? And I
Mhm.
think again, we're all artists here. So yes, we can get behind the idea of like you mix two colors to get a new color. You can add things to create a new texture. And I think we forget, or at least I did, I forgot how to do that in my life, like how to do that in a way that brings me so much joy, so much joy. And I think for me, it's the inquisitiveness. I'm kind of addicted to it now. I'm like, oh my God, what else can I do that I haven't thought of? Like,
Yeah.
it's almost like I think you really reconnect as well with your inner child. I know like that gets talked about a lot, but I
Mm.
think children don't see barriers. Like, even if there's a creative constraint, they don't see what they can't do. They just think what they can do. And I think it helps you get back to that as an adult.
That's so good. And like what you have been going through this past year is so intoxicating. Like I love feeling the energy of getting creative within my own closet, but then also like this bleeds into so many other
Yeah.
areas and you can take this creative constraint and put it on so many other pieces of
Yeah.
your life that will have a byproduct of spending less money on shit that doesn't actually make you happy or improve your life. Like I had a client who she was really unhappy with how her living room setup was. And she was like, okay, well, I need to like put aside this much money to buy the new living room set. And I'm like, why? Whoa, wait. You have to go an entire month, don't buy anything new. You're only allowed to like shop Facebook Marketplace and spend this amount, but shop
Mm.
the rest of your house and figure out how to make your living room a better environment. And that's what she did. And she was like, wait, I'm obsessed with my living room now. And she like took a
Mm.
piece of art from her guest room and like moved where the chair was. I do that
Yeah.
in my living room all the time. And I
Mm.
want to talk about this in relation to your no buy course because there's a piece
Mm.
inside of this as well where you take time to sit with what you have to figure
Mm.
out what holes you need to fill. So with this specific client it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't need a whole living room set, I just needed a cozier rug, right?
Yeah.
Like that was the piece that felt like it was missing when I tried and was creative within my what I currently have. And
Mm.
you do this with your, I mean, you literally have a way to track it, I know, inside of your course, right? When you're like filling holes in your closet and listing out things that you might want to buy in the future, which is, for those of you who have heard me talk about this before, your want list, where you keep a running note in your notes app of things you want and you have to let it sit on that note for at least 2 weeks, ideally a month, in order to see if it's of the moment and emotional spend. What is the actual need that it's filling? Do you really want it? So can you talk more about what that process looks like for you inside
Mm.
of your no buy?
Yeah, so I recognized very quickly that when I tried using like wish lists in the past, I was like, it was like a shopping list. I was like, I'm just going to get everything on it. And especially like this is the thing, when you do have money, you're like, oh, well, I can. So it's so easy to justify it. And sometimes, it can be very unconscious that you're doing it. Like, oh, yeah, I want it. I got it. Like, whatever the song is, like, I want it. I got it. You're just like, it's especially if you've been in that place where like many people I'm sure listening to this, like I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck and not be able to pay my bills and be living in a room I couldn't stand up in, which is another story for another day. I'm sure we've covered it on your podcast.
Yeah.
But I think for me the biggest thing was, okay, well, if a wish list isn't a shopping list, how do I change how my brain understands a wish list? So I came up with this thing called like the traffic light system, which first of all helps my brain, and like you said, it involves waiting. I think one of the biggest things in the 21st century with the buy it now button, with this, we've become so conditioned to instant gratification.
Say it louder. My
And
God.
what my no buy showed me was how much I had become accustomed to that. Like I didn't realize how many things I would buy by just like, oh, buy it now button, done, or whatever was the, oh, there's, and also things like, brands telling me there's one left in stock and being like, they're playing on my urgency. So I think with urgency and the need for instant gratification, when you take that away, what I found was fascinating. And again, the wish list, I call it like the traffic light system wardrobe wish list, but it's a wish list that actually helps you shop with intention, because people will say make sure it's a full body yes, but I'm like, I don't trust myself to make a full body yes when
Yeah.
there's a buy it now button and I'm telling myself, oh, I can think of all the ways I'm going to use it. So the wish list actually makes you ask yourself questions that you have to answer in order to categorize whether it's a red light, you're not going to buy it, whether it's a yellow light, so maybe it's something not right now, but we'll consider it a future, or if it's a green light, we're like, actually, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I really think that's going to add to the creativity that you're after, the peace you're after, because more stuff didn't make me happy. More stuff did not make me feel like, oh, I feel more enough now because I have more stuff. So I needed something, especially for those times where I didn't have to. It's a little bit like I trust myself, but I also know my brain is easily swayed by big corporations who have the budget, social media who are designed to work with my brain's level of dopamine to
They're paid
make
a
me
fuck
want
ton of money
something.
to make
Yeah.
your brain think those things and want those
Like it's not even
things.
mindset, it's science, right? It's like no,
Literally.
there's a point to what you can and can't do. So I was like, okay, well, I have to work with this. And I think that was huge for me, like understanding. I remember the first time it was like, oh, I want something. And then realizing, like, again, I was very gentle with myself. I was like, you can have it, you can break the snow by. But again, I was still like, but what will I do if I don't? And the funny
Yeah.
thing was that always brought me back to, okay, what could you do instead? What do you have that's similar? Why do you want this? Do you only want it because you've seen all the people that you think are stylish wearing it? Like, what is it that's making it a now thing? And what was so brilliant about this wish list was as I'm getting close to the end of the year, so many things became red lights.
Mm.
Like I got to the point where I could make something like sometimes something would be a yellow light for long enough that I'd be like, I don't, I've lost interest in that now. And that also taught me that your brain does need time to make certain decisions when it comes to things, tangible things that you're adding into your life that take up space, that
Mm.
distract your attention. Like obviously not everything we buy is bad. I'm not saying that, but I think in a world of more, and the instant gratification, you have to ask yourself, like, is more stuff making you like is it the thing that makes you happiest, like, and if
Mm.
it is, like, how long until you need to buy another thing for it to make you happy?
Right.
And again, I'm talking from my own experience, that was something I realized. And even for me, what was interesting about recognizing instant gratification was really spending some time with temptation and desire. So one of the things I use from my coaching background was like, and I talk about this in the course, is like how to entertain desire, I call it. So like when your brain is like, I need it, I want it, we have to get it now, we're gonna miss out if we don't have it, da, da, da. I would literally like talk to the desire. I'd be like, what do you need?
Yeah.
I'd be like, why do you need this now? Like and again, it was almost like talking to a friend where I was like, tell me about it. Tell me about this beautiful bag you've seen that you feel like you need right now. And I think even just making space to not shame yourself for desire, like desire is a natural part of being a human, but also entertaining it. And what I found was there was always a point where it would peak. Like the desire at some point would peak, and I'd be like, and it would grow and grow and grow. But when it peaked and then it would start to come back down, I'd be like, oh, we don't, that was
Mm.
maybe about something else, not the bag. And when something kept coming back around again and again, the beauty of doing a no buy is you've given yourself that time to be like, okay, it's been a year and I still think that makes sense to be added into my wardrobe. It's okay that it's not trending anymore. It's okay that it's not the top of anyone else's list anymore. It's still on my list. And again, I think the more buffers you can put between yourself and the buy in one click, the more buffers you can put between to slow yourself down in the process of buying something, the more it's going to feel like, ah, I'm so glad I have that thing versus like,
Yes.
I need that thing to be okay.
Yes. Okay. I have three things that we need to talk about here that I just picked up on. So, first thing is redefining or reacclimating ourselves with the feeling of desire.
Yeah.
What's happened with the instant gratification and with the urgency is that desire has started to feel like scarcity because desire has turned into the thought, I don't have it or I
Yeah.
can't have it,
Mm.
rather than the delicious feeling that desire actually is, which is I
Mm.
want it and I can't wait to get it and I can't
Literally.
wait to have it. Like I think about this when like you're dating someone that you're really attracted to, right? And the build
Mm.
up to when you like kiss for the
Mm.
first time or hook up for the first time,
Mm.
that build up and that desire is one of the most delicious
Yeah.
feelings, right? Like you are soaking in it, you're
Mm.
enjoying that feeling of desire. And
Mm.
we've forgotten what that feels like when it comes to spending money, right? And why I think we've forgotten that is because there's a lack of belief that you can have whatever you want if you so desire it, right? So it's like if I don't get it right now, if I don't like black out
Mm.
and cut out all of my logical reasoning, I'm not going to be able to buy it for myself and have it because I don't believe in my ability to make money, manage money well, make good spending decisions. So I have to get it now. So it's become this weird thing that we can't just enjoy wanting a thing because because we're
Mm,
also, I think, afraid of not wanting it anymore. It's like, it
mm.
reminds me of that Office episode where Michael Scott comes in and he's like, Pam, I want to adopt a baby. Can you figure that out for me? And Pam's like, whoa, whoa. And she's like, I mean, the process might take a while and it's going to cost a lot of money. And he's like, I don't know if I'm going to want a baby in 6 months. And Pam's like, well, you probably won't. And he's like upset and then goes into his office.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to
Mm,
us wanting things,
mm,
we do love the feeling of wanting something, but then there's a fear that if we don't want it anymore, then we don't then get that dopamine hit and we're sad
mm,
about that dopamine hit, or maybe the scarcity feeling of, oh no, nothing will be able to make me feel like that again, or I'm gonna miss out on this good feeling of buying the thing now or the instant gratification. And yeah,
mm.
we've just forgotten to sit in the delicious desire
Mm,
feeling. So the other thing here is the slowness versus the urgency. And this
mm.
is where abundance versus scarcity comes in,
Yeah.
because abundance is actually rooted in slowness, in
Mm,
taking time. Because anything that is urgent and rushed and instantly gratified, that's coming from scarcity. That's
mm,
rooted in like the frenetic nature of like, I have to
mm.
get it now, or I don't have time to think about it, or like I don't want to sit and think about it, or like it will never be at this price again. Like
Yeah.
all of that comes from some version or flavor of scarcity. Do you feel that?
Definitely, because even when you were saying about like the deliciousness of desire, like I think about and I think there was I can see how maybe I would have always been led here to my no buy because I could see things that I had waited for and
Mm,
how they're some of my favorite things. That's what's interesting as well.
wow.
Like I love thrifting, so yes, of course, there's things you do see in the moment, but there's one thing in particular in my wardrobe that I had lusted after. I would call it lust, like for a long time, many years, and I would go visit said thing.
Wait,
Shop.
what is this item? Tell me which one it is.
It's a bag. It's my Hermes Kelly, which like I waited for a
Yes,
really long
okay.
time. I knew it was like a lot of money, and again, I was like, I couldn't have afforded it when I was a younger artist. Like when I was younger, like I was going to have to save up for it. But I would go to the shop and I would go like visit the bag and be like, I'm gonna go have a bag date. And I
That's
think, like you
beautiful.
said, for me, what was so different was I knew one day I would have it if I continued to want it. Like
Mm,
it wasn't like, oh, I'm going there to taunt myself. Like even during my no buy, a lot of the time I didn't crave going into shops, ironically. But if I was in London and I was traveling, I was like, oh, okay, we don't have that in America. Let's see what's here. Again, curiosity. I didn't go in being like, oh my gosh, close my eyes and don't look at anything because I'm going to be tempted. I think it helped me really build that relationship with temptation, with desire, where I was like, okay, if you like something, that's okay. We can like befriend it. And like you said, I think with urgency, what my no buy did help me see was, especially as someone who loves shopping pre-loved, if something goes, there'll be something better.
yes.
There'll be something better anytime, especially as someone who loves pre-loved stuff. There's been things that I've seen and I didn't buy and gone, oh, I'm never going to find it again. Only later in life to, surprise, surprise, find it again on the pre-loved market. And either one of two things happens. I go, oh my gosh, amazing. It came back to me. Or I see it again and go, do you know what? I don't really want that anymore. So like either way, you can't lose. And I do
Yeah.
believe that. Like, if something isn't there anymore, there will be something better. Okay, it might not come tomorrow. It might not come in a week. You might not find it in a year. But for me, things that I have that I really wanted, I did enjoy. Again, there was times like
Mm,
so that when I did actually buy that bag, it was so exciting. It was so exciting being like, this is the real time now. It's happening. And
yeah.
all the times that I went into the shop and I would see it and hold it and like try it on my outfits was also my brain being like, does it work for me in my lifestyle? I was doing a lot of research effectively. So there was lots of things that were helping my decision making, but not from a place of the decision has to be made today and I have to have it now.
Yeah. Okay. So now with your no buy coming to an end in 15-ish almost days, are there any things with your traffic
Mm,
light system that are
mm.
green right now that you're
Yeah.
like the day this ends, you're about to click buy and that are on that list for you?
No, it's
Okay,
bizarre.
let's talk about it. I thought that would be your answer
Yeah.
because, and I'm so excited. I want to hear more about why this
Yeah.
is.
Mm.
But what I want to go back to right at the beginning of the conversation, when it's like when you set goals based on guilt, shame, and grit and just
Yeah.
get through it and do the 365 days, if you're really good at holding yourself to something, even when there's not a deeper excitement
Mm.
or curiosity, the moment that challenge ends or the moment you hit that
Yeah.
goal, you revert back to your old ways, which is why so many people who pay off credit card debt through grit and muscle end up
Yeah.
in debt again, right? Or you go on a diet, you do Whole 30, and then the day
100%.
it's over, you binge, right? So for you, this is like you've literally rewired in your body and brain. So you're not like just trying to grit your way to the end of the 365 days because you've just fundamentally changed how you think about it. So please tell more. Please elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I saw a lot of things on my wish list go from like amber to red, and anything that was green was most of the time amber first. Like I had enough things that I was like, wow, I'm really asking myself questions. And again, inquisitiveness was really like it, curiosity has been the driving force of this whole experiment, and I'm taking that with me. But I think even things that are green light, again, I'm not like, oh, I need it now. I think what it's
Mm.
taught my, and it will be interesting. I've always said in my Substack, like, I actually think a low buy is harder than a no buy because it's so
Mm.
like you're forced to be creative with what you have. Whereas like adding anything into my wardrobe now, I'm almost a little bit precious of the creativity that I've got. I'm kind of like, I don't want anything to like another new thing. Like it's how do I want to say this? Um yeah, I think the idea of bringing more in, I don't associate with the ability to be even more creative. I associate it
Mm.
that like more might take away from the creativity. So I think the not being in a rush has been one of the biggest things that has helped with the challenge. And it's so fascinating what it's brought me back to. Like getting my library card, getting so many books from the library, um, the way I
We
cook
love
now.
libraries over
We
here.
love, we, I remember the day I told you, I was like, I've discovered my library
Send
card
me
in
a picture
America.
of your
I
library
was
stack the first day you went.
so
It was so
excited.
good.
And just even like, yesterday I took a gift for a friend who was making us dinner and I wrapped it in like tissue paper I'd kept from some it was just some like pretty packaging from a stationery company I brought and I put like a wax seal on and I made the card from scratch. Like I did all these things that like before I was like, I'll just buy a card, I'll just get it gift wrapped, da da da. But I think what I was craving last year was slowness. I was craving slowness. I was craving the pause to hear my own brain again. And I think the no buy has kind of become a metaphor for that. It's given me a lot of skills that I think in many ways I turned away from, and I
Mm.
hadn't really given them the chance to like bloom and blossom and get bigger and be in that awe of like, wow, I don't need more stuff. I can have more stuff. Like you said, this isn't about I'm now a minimalist, I'm never going to shop again. But it has made me think like, if I bring something into my wardrobe, is it helping what I've already got? Is it going to work harder with what I already have? Or am I going to have another piece? I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea what to do with that. That is
Yeah.
like whatever. So I think that's the biggest thing. And the things that I do want, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll again, I think it's the rush has gone. And it will be interesting to see what happens, but other than like a pair of pajama bottoms that have a hole in, there's nothing that actually like needs replacing. And I think that's also been good to see like, yeah, I bought for the most part items that are high quality over the past few years. So I don't need to keep buying more and more items. I just need to use what I've got and really wear the hell out of them.
Wow. So I want to talk about now the this narrative that I feel like has been shoved into our brains. And again, as business owners, online business owners, both of us, we've been in the like coach mindset realm. And I think we get a lot of narratives around abundance and what does
Mm.
it mean to have an abundance mindset. And a lot of what I see is that abundance means that you spend money and you never choose to spend less money. So, like, someone who truly feels abundant would feel good going to the independently owned bookstore and buying the book rather than going to the library. And that
Mm,
never sat right with me because I'm like, as
mm,
someone who's really a good steward of her money, I'm
mm,
always going to go to the library if
mm,
she's there and ready for me to read versus going and buying the book. Like, I don't understand why that
mm,
feels less abundant than spending the money. And so for you, I'd love to know your experience, right? With, I mean, not telling yourself no. I also want to note that I heard what I heard you say earlier too, and I wanted everyone to hear this. You said, I could break my no buy challenge. I
mm.
have the choice
Yeah.
to buy something, but why, right? You put yourself in the driver's seat. It's not like you were forcing this upon yourself
Yeah.
with no exit. You
Mm,
gave yourself choice, which is part of why I'm assuming it did not feel
mm,
restrictive or guilt ridden
yeah.
and it was able to
Mm,
sustain itself. So I'd love to hear you talk more about how spending less money and being in that realm
mm.
didn't fuel your scarcity.
Yeah. I think this is almost like a podcast in of itself, because I think that's what I'm still kind of like in the thick of realizing is
Mm,
how I got to a point last year where I'd made the most money I'd ever made in my life. And sure, there were things that were great about that, I'm not going to lie, but there was also there were parts of me that felt empty and unsure. And I think I'd started to, like you said, that idea of abundance had started to be the bigger house, the second house, the da da da. Like I think there's very much a checklist of things we get given as society in a capitalist society, right? That success looks like. When you get to this level, you should have this amount of stuff. And while I always, in many ways, rejected that as a concept, like I could reject it in terms of logic, like emotionally something in me had kind of caught onto that. And I think I'm not ashamed to say that. I think again, it's we live in a world where it is all around us. And I do think that probably has a lot to do with like baby starving artist Harry, who was like, there
mm,
was a time where she, couldn't buy the things that me a year ago could. And I think what was interesting as well for me was actually choosing to have a slower pace of life, which for me does mean earning less now and being happier for it, which is there's a part of me that so didn't want that to be true. I was like, I really don't
yeah.
want that to be true. And I love money. I very much love money. I have like no issue with like, I don't think money is bad at all. But I think again, if I'm going to be creative with how I use my money, if I'm going to be curious about my money versus trying to get it right, versus trying to make up for something. And I think, again, it's this mental space. Like for me, I'm always trying to work out if my mental space is my priority, if my mental well being is my priority now, what does that look like? Knowing that what I'm doing right now could look completely different a year from now, could look completely different 10 years from now. And I think that kind of also ties back, funny enough, into like the no buy. It's like we're all trying to like get the perfect wardrobe today. We're all trying to get like the perfect curated living room today. Like it kind of thing kind of comes back to the waiting, right? And being like, okay, well, if I'm not in a rush, if I'm not trying to like live a life that is just for Instagram, then who am I doing it for? What do I want it to look like? And I think abundance, again, I think it will continue to ebb and flow in terms of what that looks like and means for me, depending at where I'm at in my life. I do think abundance for me feels like choice. It does feel like that. But I also think there's a difference in believing you can only have choice when you're earning a certain amount of money. And I think
Mm,
that's the thing that I wish baby Harry could have. And in some ways, I look at baby Harry, I'm like, she was really thrifty. Like she sold things on eBay. Like she did lots
yeah.
of stuff that like she problem solved really, really well because she had to. And I think sometimes, people talk about like their happiest memories. I always think about that scene on American Beauty where he quits his like corporate job and goes like work at a burger joint. And he's like, I just remember the best days of my life would like flipping burgers. Like that summer that I worked in the burger shop and would like smoke a joint afterwards and like chill or whatever. And I was like, I genuinely sort of get that now, the fact that there's nothing wrong with wanting to scale, but at some point, what's enough?
Yeah.
Like what I think that for me had been the question I found myself thinking last year is like, what's enough?
And this
Like,
is the weird reckoning. And you and I have talked about this so
yeah.
much over this past year, but the reckoning of when you're a starving artist, right? And then you go on a journey to become a not starving artist, right? Like that's my literal
Yeah.
business name, right? My whole platform. You go on this journey to become a not starving artist. And what I found happen, right? And what you found happen is that we kind of entered into a trauma response of doing the exact opposite, right? So like
Mhm.
I'm going to not be a starving artist, so I'm going to go and build this business and make as much money as possible. I deserve to earn as much as possible. And
Mhm.
so but the thing is that was still tied to being a starving artist. It was just the opposite expression of it, right?
Mhm.
And chasing it. And I see this a lot with money habits,
Mhm.
where if you grow up in a certain kind of household, you might adopt the frugality of your parents, or
Yeah.
you might do the exact opposite
Opposite.
and
Yeah.
abandon every
Mhm.
single thing that even has a tiny whiff of frugalness. And
Mhm.
so that's still rooted, though, in that initial thing that is not part of you or your identity. And
Mhm.
so the reckoning then of if I'm going to be a not starving artist, the opposite of a starving artist is having financial wellness. And why I use the term financial wellness is because it encompasses so many more expressions of feeling good about your money than just like being financially independent, right? And earning this amount and having this amount in your investments. So it's about getting to bring whatever parts of you from your previous starving artist life that you
Mhm.
love and that you admire. Like we were scrappy as hell. The
Yeah.
fact that you lived in a room that you couldn't stand up in, like, hell yeah, that girl figured shit out, right? And like
Yeah.
being able to go and make things happen for ourselves. Like, there's so many incredible things about that version of us that I feel I lost as
Mm.
I started on a journey of like owning my own business and being fully in charge of my own finances
Mhm.
and my income, which I love. But I had to reconnect this past year with that scrappiness, with that creative
Mhm.
side, decide what I wanted to keep and leave behind. Like it was a lot messier. It was like having to create my own puzzle pieces that I put together rather than like being given the thing that I was supposed to strive for. Does that make sense?
100%. I mean, I always used to say to my clients, like, every creative has a CEO and an artist inside them.
Mm,
And I think sometimes we spend a lot of time with the artist and we're like, no, making money from our art is bad. And we have all these like judgments on it. And by the same token, sometimes like, and I think for what happened for me was I made up so much with my CEO part that I actually stopped listening to my artist. And in the end, my artist was like, hey, remember me? Like, we have some ideas, we have some needs. Like, and I think for me, last year was really coming back to like, okay, that part needs some attendance now, that part needs some love and care. And I trust the two will come back together, but I think it's letting go of the idea that, like you said, the opposite of a starving artist is a multi-million dollar business artist. Like that can exist. And I know for me, when I first started Freelance with Freedom, a big part of it was I wanted to show people what was possible. I think
mm,
that there was something in me that wanted people to see you can have it all. And I think I can see my motivation in that
mm,
was came from a good place, but I think also at some point it's like you have to come back to yourself and again be
mm,
like, okay, when like I could have kept going and being like, and you can do this and you can do that, but I was like, okay, I think my chapter there is done now. I think my chapter there, and it's time for a new chapter. And am I willing to be brave enough to like explore a new chapter or keep doing something because I'm hell bent on showing everyone else what is possible? And again, even that is so complex. Like I think that's something I'm still figuring out is like I
mm,
want artists to believe you can make fuck tons of money from your art. I will never not want to believe that. I know that's possible. But it's also okay if you don't want to. Like it's also
right.
okay if, like you said, I think understanding what does financial wellness mean to you? Like
Mm,
what, that number doesn't have to be the same as my number, as Brooke's number, as the people you work with. I
yeah.
think we are told conditionally the numbers that we should be
Mm,
aiming for. And I think again, it depends on where you live. It depends what market you're in. Like again, and ultimately, what do you want? Like, what do
right.
you want? Like, it's okay if you do want to be a multi-million dollar artist. Like, love that for you. But even if you get that, like, don't forget to check in with yourself and be like, where's your own like personal barometer of like contentment?
Right. And again, it's like we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
No.
Like, you're still a business owner. I'm still a business owner. We both love being self-employed. We
Mhm.
both love making money. But it's putting everything on the table of like,
Yeah.
but then what does that actually get to look like? Like, really piecing apart, what do I enjoy doing? What do I require? Because there's a
Yeah.
practicality to all of this as well, right? Like,
Mhm.
you also still need to make rent. And also,
Yeah.
more money does equal more opportunity, freedom, and choice. And
Yeah.
there's ways to infuse freedom, opportunity, and choice that have nothing to do with money, that maybe because you haven't been focusing on, you're not seeing
Mhm.
those realms where you can have more expression in that way. And I think too, there's there's like a pendulum that swings, I think. And when you're a starving artist, when you grow up, right, being an artist, being told you're going to be penniless, living paycheck to paycheck, right, living in squalor,
Mhm.
right, if that was your story, what happens is then when you start to have more financial freedom, like in the literal cash dollars in your bank account, the pendulum swings all the other way in
Yeah.
order to heal the part of you that was literally deprived and restricted for so long,
Yeah.
right? So what happens is we overspend, or we are like, wait, I want to like grow this business to the gods so I can have as much money as I could ever want and never have to think about money again, because you're
Mhm.
trying to heal the part of you that was restricted, right?
Yeah.
So the pendulum swings that way, which is why we love the version of us that did those things, right? Because it was healing that part of us that
Mhm.
needed the healing. But then the pendulum comes back to the middle, right? Where it starts to swing, where it's like, okay, maybe, all right, maybe we don't need that much anymore, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we can make some spending decisions. Maybe we
Mhm.
can choose what we want things to look like now, while also not going all the way back to starving artist territory. Like, and that middle ground, I think, is a consistent conversation that you have to have with yourself. Like, you don't just figure it out and then get to ride it out for the rest of your life, right? It's a constant discovering.
Yeah, no, I think it's always evolving based on what you want and where you're at in your life. And I think, there was a point last year where I was like, if I needed to, I could leave LA. Like, again, not from
Mm,
a place of like I have to. Again, like the no buy. I think I was like, what's on the table? And I think being in a place where you can just let every decision be there and be
mm,
like, if I now know these values are what's important to me, if I now know that I'm going to prioritize this, this, and this, what decisions do I want to make that are currently within my means to do, that are available to me? And not even necessarily making them, but I think just for me, it was there was so many things I'd shut out. I was like, no, you have to be on this trajectory. You have to keep going. You have to like, yeah, I think I was very much in that energy. And it was really life changing to be like,
yeah.
I just need some time. And I had mental and physical health things happening. I think for me that was the other thing that was hard, was like, when you ignore your mental health, your physical health suffers as well.
Mhm.
And there's something humbling, I think, about your body stopping you even if you don't want to. Like, there is something very humbling about like, okay, now you have no choice but to like put everything on the table.
Yeah.
And again, I think as artists, especially if you are currently struggling as an artist financially, we're made to feel like that's never an option. And okay, it will look different. But like you said, I think that resourcefulness, we forget that comes from our creativity. That doesn't come from our CEO. Like, my resourcefulness comes from my artists. Like, they're the
Mm,
one that like sold stuff on eBay, like to pay their rent, and was handing out flyers in the middle of London like 2 a.m. in the morning. Like, she was the one that was like, okay, we need to make this much money this month to pay the rent. How are we going to do it? Like,
that
she
is
was
so
the problem
beautiful.
solver. And I think that always, like, I'm connecting back to that now, is like,
Yeah.
okay, what are the options? What do you need? What do you want to try?
And I think we have such a hard time putting things on the table because we
Mm,
like there to be like rules for ourselves. And as
mm,
you're like, this is where identity comes into play. And I think something that I've had to again reckon with this past year is when you decide that you're worth more as an artist, which is a growth that every single
yeah,
artist should go through, right? I am worth being paid. I'm worthy of financial
100%.
abundance.
Yeah.
When you go through that identity shift, what I found is that my brain started to put rules in place of like, well, I'm not allowed to do anything that doesn't pay me, or I will
Mm.
not do anything that pays me less than this. Like it became very much like
Yeah.
very strict, and nothing was like up for debate anymore, which I think was needed for a minute. Like I needed to push myself in that realm. But then being like, wait, but I'm saying no to this opportunity that I'm really excited about just because I have this arbitrary rule that doesn't feel good. Like I was
Mm.
just a reader for callbacks at a theater that I really admire with a really amazing playwright who is doing a new play right now.
Mm.
Like I got to be a reader for that and
Mm.
it was paying me $15 an hour, which
Yeah.
what I preach to my clients is like if you live in New York City, anything that is less than $30 an hour is too little to pay for your bills.
Yeah.
Does that mean that anything that is free work or doing something for lower cost, you have to say no to? No, like you get to put it on the table and then make a decision based on your values, based on your desires, based on what you want, right? And I think that's that trauma response of like, I'm a starving artist or I'm not a starving artist, right? Not
Yes.
me like
Yeah.
changing my business name, right? But when we put ourselves into that binary, it
Yeah.
becomes like, well, wealthy and people who know their worth do this or don't do this, and starving artists do this. And we
Mm.
forget that like there's this gray area where you get to make different decisions still in your power, still
Mm.
in choice, but that it's not necessarily as black and white, I think, as sometimes it can feel.
Totally. I mean, I think for one, what I've experienced is seasons. I definitely think that's been
Mm,
very true for me. Like there's seasons where in one season I need something different to another. And also, like I always used to say to my clients, like, okay, if you take the money away, how else is it paying you? Like, what is the
mm,
other payment outside of money? And I think that, like you said, we have to live. I live in LA, you live in New York. Like these are expensive cities to live in. That's them be the rules. Like that's just how it is. I'm
them's the rules.
I'm not going to argue with that. I'll try and tell you it's not. But at the same time, I think there, like you just said, there are things that coming back to what if my joy is one of my values, if my joy is very much an important value to me, alongside with other values, where does that get a piece of the pie? And I know for
Mm,
me, like the writing I've been doing, it's a very significant pay cut, I will be very honest. But the joy it brings me is a payment of sorts. And yes, I have to pay my bills, I have to pay my mortgage, whatever. But I think it is worth asking yourself if thing, and especially as an artist, like we don't have a 9 to 5 where someone's saying from 9 till 5, you're going to be here, you're going to do this work, here's your paycheck, and it's the same every month. I know for me as well, there are times when I've worked with an up, especially when I was a makeup artist, I'd worked with an up and coming brand who I just adored their mission. I adored what they were
mm,
about. I adored their imagery. And I knew I'd be getting significantly less than my day rate, sometimes nothing at all, but it would pay me in a different way. And
mm.
I still think like the most successful people I've seen who are creatives still do that. When I think about Matthew McConaughey doing what was it called? Dallas Cowboys Club, I think it was.
Dallas
Like
Buyers Club.
Dallas Buyers Club, that's it.
Dallas
Yeah.
Cowboys
I was like,
Club.
wait, no, that's not it. Oh my gosh, I feel so English right now.
Good.
I think about, I read his book and he was talking about like, that decision was because I wanted to make a movie where I wasn't in a rom-com. And he was like, no shame to me in my rom-com films, but I just wanted to challenge myself as an actor. And I think everyone has their own version of that, whether it's you want to, like, I wrote my first poem the other day at a creative writing workshop. And it was so funny because the same day, one of my friends texted me and was like, oh my gosh, I made my first million. And I was so happy
Mm,
for her. And
yeah.
I was like, I just wrote my first poem. And I was so happy for me.
And
And I
both equally worthy of celebration.
exactly both like I've made her a care package and like sent her a little thing to celebrate. And I'm like so proud of her, but I'm also proud of me. And I
Mm,
think this is the thing, like it's understanding, like, yes, know the value of your work, but also know the value of your joy as well.
yeah.
Like, don't underestimate how important that is.
And I also believe in the core of my being and my heart that if you're following your joy and what you feel called to, that financial wellness can't help but to follow you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that it yields immediate income. That's just one version of financial wellness and what that could look like. And so
Mm.
for us to fully zoom out and be like, big picture, if I follow my heart, right, and make sure I'm taking care of myself in the meantime, i.e., like our scrappy, resourceful forceful artist versions, taking care of ourselves, if we're following our joy, it has to yield in some sort of stability and wellness. I have to believe that. And
Yeah.
so being able to separate the two things too of your artistry and your creativity doesn't
Mm.
have to make you money,
Yeah,
right? It can, it
100%.
100% can, but it doesn't have
100%.
to.
Yeah.
And how are you going to pay your bills? And do you believe that you're worthy of having stability? And what could that look like? Separating those two things and asking yourself questions in both of those realms. Sometimes financial wellness and stability is relying on another person who has offered to support you.
Mm.
Sometimes that looks like relying on your own savings account. Sometimes
Mm.
that looks like you earning a fuck ton of money because this project or this thing that you were following with your heart took off and now you're getting paid a fuck ton.
Yeah.
Sometimes it looks like a job that takes no brain power that fully supports you while you get to put all of your energy and passion into your art. It can look a million different ways, but we have to stop feeling like they all need to be one thing, or we have to do one thing for financial stability, or if we follow our heart, or if we're in a spending season and not a saving season, that something's gone wrong. We're artists, our life is going to fluctuate and be
Mm.
all cattywampus, and for some reason we like still have a hard time believing that that's actually how it works.
Well, and it's kind of what we signed up for. I think this is the thing
Right.
that, like, when my brain wants to throw a tantrum, I'm like, "Bitch, you signed up for this. Like, you know, you didn't want to have the desk job 9 to 5 every day." And again, I still tell myself, like, there were moments even this year where I was like, maybe I do want to work in a coffee shop so I could just write for fun. Maybe I do just want to do this kind of business so I could do that and it be for fun. Like, I think I love that you said, like, you don't have to monetize your art, because I do think that's really important that people know that. It doesn't make you any the less creative just because you're not monetizing your art. Both can exist. But I do think, like, again, it kind of comes back to being willing to put everything on the table and stop worrying about what everyone else thinks and be like, what do you want? What supports you best right now? And if there is a goal, is it a goal that feels exciting?
Mm.
Is it fed by curiosity? Because I think what I did learn from my no buy was like there was something so, like, I don't want to be cocky, but I'm like, it was so easy. Just like, I think you said to a friend the other day, I was like, it's been so easy. It's like been one of the most easy things I've ever done in my life. And I think it's because, and don't worry, I help you with this in the No Buy course as well. Like, I was able to understand how to work with desire, temptation, how to look at the reasons as to why I brought things, or why I had a wardrobe before where I was like, there's a lot of stuff in here, but I don't wear it. There's a lot of stuff in here,
Mm.
but I don't know what to wear. Like, I could see everything for what it was, and I was able to explore it all.
Mm. And what I love too is that you let the curiosity find you and you didn't try and force it. And
Yeah.
I think for a lot of us, right, like you might be on the pendulum swing of like, you're still healing. You just need to spend all
Mm.
the new money that you've created because that's how you're going to heal, right? Like your pendulum hasn't swung and it's okay. Just be there for a minute, right? And for you, it's like you started to feel this gut pull to
Mm.
maybe be curious about this, and
Mm.
you didn't force and think like, oh, I have to do this now, so let me try and tell myself
Mm.
I'm being curious. Like, you can't rush curiosity and you can't
Yeah.
rush those gut pulls. Like, this is adjacent, but it's the similar energy of like, I've been feeling this like inkling in my body that I'm gonna have a long sober season in my future. Like, and I
Mm.
love a drink. Y'all know, like, I
Yeah.
love margaritas. I love a happy hour. And for the past like 2 years, I've had this thought, like, I think I am going to have a sober season, but I've never tried to force myself into it, right? I've like
Mm.
done a month or I've done a season, but then I've
Yeah.
come back to it because I'm like, I don't want to push myself into doing something that I'm not ready for. But I asked myself
Mm.
a lot of questions about it. I was getting curious about it. But then this month, February is the first month, but like that that like inkling turned into genuine curiosity and excitement about what would it look like to do it for the rest of the year. And now it doesn't
Mm.
terrify me to try and do it for the long term because I let my body do its thing by not blacking out, by continuing to ask questions, by not being afraid that I was putting that on the table, right?
Mm.
And I'm telling myself, like, my 30th birthday, I'm going on a cruise. I'm going to drink on my cruise, right? Like, that's going to happen. But, like, and that's okay. That doesn't mean I failed. That doesn't mean I'm not doing this challenge because it's not about that, right? It's like a different. And so, what I want to say, this is like going into like the money seasons. If you're in a
Mm.
season of spending, or if you're in a place where like you have debt, but you don't feel much about paying it off and you're just enjoying having a paycheck again or something, like ride it out and keep it on the table and keep asking questions, because then that will only ever result in you being able to make sustainable change. It's only when we black out or force ourselves into something that the change doesn't happen or it's not sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, my no buy has been a catalyst for many other changes in my life. That was what was
Right.
fun. Like the curiosity that came from that has led to curiosity in other places. I found myself like being like, oh, I kind of would like to try a year without my business being on Instagram to see what would happen. Like, yeah,
Whoa.
I
Ooh,
find myself
fun.
feeling like that would be really fun. Like, and I find myself thinking things like that, like, oh, what else would be a fun challenge? Because I do
Mm.
think a challenge to me, as someone with very all or nothing thinking, used to be like, you have to succeed at the challenge. And I think one of the best things my no buy has done for me, it's really helped me be like, oh, a challenge is so fun when you don't know what's going to happen.
Oh
And a
my God.
challenge is
And
so
we are both
fun.
achievers. We're both
Yeah.
gold star girlies. So
I
that
want
is
my
so
gold star. I want to succeed. But I think like yeah, there's just something so interesting about what my no buy did for me. It really has had like a knock-on effect in so many areas of my life. It opened up things that needed up opening. It helped me put things on the table that needed putting on the table. I had the space to be like, okay, what else do I want to look at in my life? And I think taking something away, again, we're in a capitalist consumer society where like we're used to adding things in, and it's actually been so interesting for me, like, what else do I want to take away? Even if it's just for a month, even if it's just for 6 months, even if it's for a year. And I think I'm very like, my no buy, I learned so much stuff about myself, about my how I exist, like about my wardrobe, about how I think about style, like so many things. Like I think that's why I started writing essays, because I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much I'm learning. I just have to like document it all. I like couldn't get it out fast enough. And I think even like if I use the example of Instagram, I'm just like, oh, I wonder what that would be like. I no longer feel like I have to do it,
Mm.
or I understand a lot of people right now don't want to do it because of various things that are happening in the world. And I've also been like, yeah, I don't feel like I have to come off it for those reasons either. I'm just like,
Yeah.
ooh, what would it be like? And I think that kind of for me is like the barometer of like something feeling fun and interesting is like, do I have that? Ooh, what that feel like? Like, can I trust that
Ooh.
if there's curiosity there? There's
Yeah.
probably, and like you said, I don't think it's something I'm going to do necessarily tomorrow, but I have found myself being like, oh, my no buy is ending. What shall I do next? Like
Yeah.
there's almost like a desire to take something else away to see what would happen.
That is so good. That's so
Yeah.
good. And this is like one of the last things I want to talk about here is about when you're embarking on something like this, right? And I mean, there's so many examples that I could come up with right now, and we'll talk about some of them. Having to set yourself up perfectly to start it. Like, I think about a
Mm.
capsule wardrobe. I want you to rant about capsule wardrobes in a second because I love when you talk about them, because capsule wardrobes are bullshit, right? And I love
Yeah.
when you explain why. But what I've noticed about capsule wardrobes, or you want to be more sustainable, or you
Mm.
want to get into a workout routine, or like you want to start anything, you want to start a new hobby, right? A craft
Mm.
project. A lot of times it feels like you have to spend a lot of money to set yourself up to be in the perfect situation to accomplish and do it well. So I'm going
Yeah.
to buy a whole capsule wardrobe so that I don't have to spend money on clothes. Or I'm going to buy all of these
Mm.
materials to do this very specific craft project so I can be more creative. Or I have to buy all of these things to allow me to be more sustainable before I can actually be more sustainable. But like, do we see how we've leapfrogged the point? Like, if you want to stop
100%.
buying clothes, like, don't go buy a fuck ton of clothes to be able to buy less clothes. If you want
Yeah.
to do an art project to use your creativity, go be creative with the shit that you can find in your house. You don't need to go buy like the perfect crochet kit, right? Go figure something else
Mm.
out. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on a capsule wardrobe and why you don't recommend capsule wardrobes.
I feel like there's so much you just said where I was like,
Yep.
um, I think for me, a capsule wardrobe, I think it started with good intention. It was like, again, have a certain amount of pieces and
Right.
then wear them. But I think, again, it starts to become a bit hard rules. Like for me, there's still a lot of fluidity and choice in a no buy, which you'll see inside the course. Like you get to make I don't even call them rules, I call them guidelines because I was like, I might break it. I might not do 365 days. I don't know. But I think with a capsule wardrobe, from what I've seen anyway, I feel like it's kind of become a concept of like based in the same 15 items that
Mm.
everyone should own. And I'm like, but if you never wear jeans, it's okay if you don't own jeans. If you
Yeah.
don't wear jeans and you don't feel good in them, don't wear them. Like a basic for you might be a sequin top if you wear sequin
Yeah.
top every day, a sequin top every day. And when I was making the no buy styling course, I was very conscious of that, of not trying to prescribe, you need this piece, and this piece. I want to help you understand what do you feel great in? Because the people who I think are the most stylish people are people who just look like they're having fun getting dressed, even if they're
Yeah.
just wearing a white t-shirt and black trousers. Like it's about what feels good to them and how they embody that. And I think for me, the capsule wardrobe it feels like laced in right and wrong a little bit. Like you need this
Mm.
and this in order to get dressed, in order to make certain outfits. And again, for me, when I think about like people in the style world, we'll talk about like, oh, creating uniforms to wear. What is a uniform for me will be completely different to what is a uniform for Brooke. And
Yeah.
what is, that's beautiful. Like when we're not all trying to feel like we have to look the same, because again, capitalism, fashion marketing, like there's a reason things trend. It's how things make money. And I
Mm.
think you hit the nail on the head with the like, you go and buy a capsule wardrobe to then be able to be stylish. I'm like, no, style isn't about more stuff. It's about I like we don't need more stuff, we need more ideas.
Yeah.
That is one of the reasons that I wanted to do the No Buy Styling course.
And about
And
getting the right stuff, right? Like
yeah,
ignoring,
yeah,
like getting rid of that idea that there's right stuff that you could
yes,
have to make you look professional, to make you more
exactly.
flattering, to like whatever it is. Like there's no
Yes.
right thing, which is what I love about how
No,
you
because
teach
it's an
it.
art. It is an art. And I think like there was a point, maybe it was summer during my no buy, where I was like, man, I wish I had a pair of black shorts. Like I was just like, and it was a really specific kind of black short I wanted. And I was like, damn, that would have been really good. And I was like, I've got two pairs of black jeans and I never wear them as much as I think I do because I looked at my index, my little app,
Yeah.
and I was like, I really don't wear my black jeans. I cut them into the shorts I wanted.
It's amazing.
And it's like laughable how simple it is.
Yeah.
But I would have just gone and brought them otherwise. Like if I wasn't doing
Yeah.
my no buy, I'd been like, right, now I'm going to spend hours on all the shopping sites looking for the best. Like you said, I think with capsule wardrobes, so it feels like the black trouser, the jean, like the one that everyone else says is the best one. No, we've all got different body shapes and sizes. Like we're all going to have our personal favorites, our personal preferences. And I think for me, it was moments like that when I was like, this is the best thing I've ever done in my life.
Yes.
The joy. I mean, even I remember taking them home and I was like, my mum's a genius at sewing and has a sewing machine. I was like, can you remind me how to use a sewing machine? I want to hem them properly. Like I was
Mm.
so like invested in like making them look how I wanted them to look using what I had. And every time I look at them, like again, they bring me joy because I'm like, took something I wasn't wearing and it's now somewhere I wear all the bloody time. And
Yeah.
it's that satisfaction that I don't think another pair of shorts could have brought me. It's,
Right. And what
it's
I
so
loved
funny.
about going through your course is because I fell prey
Mm.
to the capsule wardrobe conditioning without even realizing it.
Yeah.
Like, as I was going through, I'm like, why don't I love getting dressed? And like, there were things where I'm like, oh, I need this piece because I don't have my like standard pair of jeans or like
100%.
my neutral white shirt that I could wear with whatever. And so I found
Mm.
myself spending money on clothes that then I ended up getting rid of a few months later because I wasn't wearing and I was noticing that pattern and I couldn't figure out why. I was like, these should feel good. Like I don't understand why this isn't happening.
Mm.
And when I was going through your course and you were talking about like what are your uniforms? What are your neutrals and basics? Was
Yeah.
the first light bulb moment where I was like, my neutral is a Hawaiian shirt. My standard
Yeah.
top is a Hawaiian shirt or a tie-dye shirt. Why am I trying to get these bland ass neutrals? That's not what I enjoy wearing. Crop a fucking Hawaiian shirt, throw that on with some black trousers, there's my uniform. And no one had ever articulated that to me before. And so
Yeah.
now I'm not wasting money
Yeah.
on clothes that don't actually fit what I want to wear. Like there, again, the rules were thrown out the window. I thought it was so brilliant how you talked about it.
Well, nothing made me happier than the conversation we had when we were talking about your amazing Hawaiian shirts, which I can never not unsee as like pure Brooke. I love it. You and your earrings. And I was just like, but what if you went like even further into the Hawaiian shirt? Like, what would that look like? Like
Yeah.
we get so caught up in these rules of like, I need to look like X to be professional. I need to look like X to be a creative type, or I need to look like whatever. Like there's so many rules. And I think for me, style is really about letting go of the rules. It's really about
Mm,
tuning back into, if this is the way you express yourself, what do you feel good in? Like, and
mhm.
again, I think there's a lot of unlearning, which we do inside the No by Styling course. Like, you do have to unlearn a lot of rules that maybe happened the first time you opened up a fashion magazine, or the first time you saw
Mm.
someone talk about the perfect body size, or whatever it was, bullshit it was that's made you
The
feel that,
flattering styles for every body
yeah,
shape, how
like,
to make
and
yourself look thin.
well, that was the thing. Like, I remember my Instagram when I first used to post style content, people were like, oh, but that's not flattering. And I'd be like, yeah, and that's not my goal. My goal isn't to
Mm,
look smaller. Like, let's just
mm,
call it what it is. I'm not trying to look thinner. And it's okay if
mm,
you do like styles that are more body fitting, more body con, you do you. But I think it's letting go of this idea that we all need to look the same,
mm.
and that there's such liberation in being out of trend. Like, I think the coolest people I see, are people that just look like they have fun getting dressed and they know who they are. Like, I think it's like you said, I don't think of neutrals when I think of Brooke. I think of color. Like, look at your background. It's so you. It's filled with color and shape and texture. And I just think that shows so much of your personality. And again, I do say to people as well, like, I think people also get very set in, but what if I change my mind one day and I want something different? I'm like, then you'll want something different. Like, style gets to evolve and be fluid. But by the same token, how many people throw away perfectly good clothing that they love because they don't think it's cool enough, because they
Right.
don't think they're doing it right, because they think they need a capsule wardrobe? And I'm like, no, you just need a wardrobe full of stuff you actually like and wear. It's that simple.
Right. And this is where the slowness comes back into play. Because
Yeah.
it's like, well, what if I change my mind on what I like down the road? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, great. Because you didn't spend a fuck ton of money creating a whole new wardrobe on this one
Yeah.
thing. You slowly accumulated pieces. You're letting your brain catch up to your desires, right? It's not, it makes it easier to change your mind when you're not like rapidly buying things, consuming, trying to shift, trying to get it perfect, trying to do
Yeah.
it the right way, right? There's lower stakes involved when you take it slower.
Yeah, and I think this is why, like, no matter where you're at in your wardrobe journey, your style journey, whatever that is to you, and how much time you want to give it, like, bring it back to fun and curiosity.
Mm,
And like you said, you don't have to go out and buy a new wardrobe in order to start. Like, learn how to use what's there. Do you need to turn a pair of jeans you're not wearing into shorts so that you're excited again? Like,
yeah.
and I think that the no buy, it just gives you that space. Even if you have very little in your wardrobe right now and you hate everything, you're gonna have some space and time to be like, okay, why do I hate that thing? Why do I
Mm,
like, it's coming back to all that, like the nuggets of information that's data, so it gets to be very neutral. But I think that's what the no buy gives you more than anything. It is the time to stop and ask yourself questions that's inevitably going to help you buy a wardrobe of pieces you're much more likely to wear than a wardrobe, like you said, the capsule wardrobe, whatever the latest magazine is telling you, whatever the trends are telling you. And really spend some time, investigate what makes you feel good. Is it color? Is it neutrals? Is it bodycon? Is it oversized? Like, is it sculptural shapes? Like, there's not just one way. And also, you
mm,
don't have, style for me doesn't have to be, my style is this, and therefore it's only allowed to be in this category. Like, for me, style is like, it comes back to being a kid. And I'd get dressed like 6 times a day when I was a kid. Like,
mm,
getting dressed was fun. One of the things we actually do over my Substack is twice a month for paid subscribers, we actually like a community wardrobe play date where I give you
mm,
a theme. So I give you a theme, I make you your own like playlist for you to use on your wardrobe play date. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a space for you just to play in your existing wardrobe and have a creative constraint. So I choose one for you.
mm.
The first one we did was so cool. It was like, Chana, you're in a badass and in a villain, and then kind of see what you come up
Oh
with.
my
And
God,
it's
I
just,
love it.
it's play. Like, again, we're
Yeah.
artists. Like, we need play in our everyday lives. And what
Mhm.
better place to start than your wardrobe?
Oh, I'm obsessed. So, okay, we've obviously been talking about your no buy course. Can you tell people where, if they want to learn more about it or go
Yes.
deeper into this
Yes.
arena, where they can find
So
it?
everything is at harriethadfield.com. So just head to harriethadfield.com and you will see the No Buy Styling course. My Substack is linked there as well. And I do lots of free essays on my Substack as well. So even if you're not in a position to become a paid subscriber right now, please come and join the community. And yeah, I could just talk about clothes all day long and playing in my wardrobe. It's my favorite
Oh,
thing.
I'm obsessed. Like whenever you do stories or like on your Substack when you post pictures, it's such a nice like it's just so fun aesthetically. It's like a creative art
Yeah.
watching you get dressed. Like I felt, when I visit you and I get to watch you get dressed in real time and like do your makeup in real time, I'm like watching an artist at work. It's so amazing. It's so fun. So all of those links will be in the show notes as well, so you can click those to find more. Harriet, is there anything we haven't touched on yet that you want to share, that you want to discuss?
I don't think so. I've just loved this
Me
conversation. I feel
too.
like I hope if anyone takes away one thing, it's curiosity, like is a
Mm,
guiding force. Like it's a really like trust your curiosity. Like there's
yeah.
so much guidance in that. And bring back play in whatever way you want to explore that in your life.
Bring back fucking play. And you don't need to
Yeah.
spend money right now in order to bring back play. We love money. Money's incredible. We want more money.
Yeah.
And you can bring back play without having to spend a single dollar.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure having you on.
Thank you for having me. I've had the best time, Brooke.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Come join me on Instagram for more on how to build a simple, sexy relationship with your money. My Instagram handle is @NotStarvingArtists. And if you want to dive deeper with me, head to the show notes to learn more about one-on-one coaching. If you love this episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend that you want to get rich with.